There's not a DJ in the world who enjoys a party where there's nobody else there but him. So you can't be the most important thing. Like the dancers have to be just as important. Otherwise, you'd be happy playing to an empty club, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So everybody has their role to play on it. And I just think like it's almost like, you know, when you see a karaoke party and someone's had the mic passed around, it's happened to have come to you there for it. And I don't know, like without everybody present in there, without everybody putting their own sort of thing into it, the thing doesn't happen. And
Thanks for tuning in to the Apter Party podcast. My guest on today's episode is DJ, producer, party starter and label owner Manpower. We actually recorded this episode right before he was due to play at the Berkley Suite in Glasgow. He was playing alongside Josh Posthuman at the I Love Acid party, and right after the episode, myself and a friend of mine's went along to catch the guy's set and have a bit of a dance, and we had a wicked time. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode, and if you do, then please give us a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and please also feel free to give us a share either on social media, or you could share the episode with your friends, because in that way you'll help us grow the platform. Thanks for listening and enjoy. So how you doing?
I'm all right, yeah. I've just eaten bit too much ramen, but it was delicious, so I can't complain. But I've just got that kind of big meal syndrome, and I could go to sleep, especially because you've just bought us a beer as well. So like if I can make it awake all the way through this podcast, it'll be phenomenal.
Big night ahead though.
Yeah. All nighter, which I always enjoy. Like I love playing back to back, and I love playing all night long. So playing all night long back to back with somebody's obviously like it's a bit of a dream situation to be, and I just don't like handing over to other people when it gets busy, and I hate not being the one to make it get busy as well. I think so. I'm probably just greedy.
Best, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds then if you're playing all night the night. So tonight you're playing at the Berkley Suite. Mm-hmm. It's I Love Acid, and you're obviously playing with Josh, who's actually sat in the corner just now watching. You've obviously just travelled up from Newcastle.
That's right, yeah.
Just outside Newcastle.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, to the whole world, it's just Newcastle, but yeah, I played Robert Johnson recently, and I had to learn that it was the same at Offenbach in Frankfurt. It's sort of like they're two different places. So I live in a town called North Shields, which is in North Tyneside, which is the neighbouring borough to Newcastle, so we're the ones with all the beaches and all the way down the river and all the shipbuilding, etc. So just travelled up from there. It's not that long actually. It took quicker this time. I came via Carlisle, so it took 3 hours, but I'm used to coming up the East Coast via where you're from, Edinburgh.
Yeah, but I thought that would have been the route that you would have taken.
Normally is. I'll tell you what I found out though, that it's the first time I've been on a West Coast train, and they're nicer than the East Coast one, so I'm a bit jealous now.
Oh really?
I feel like the West Coast get everything nicer than us.
Yeah. I'm glad that we got onto the subject where you're from actually, because I've got a few questions here prepared that I wanted to go on about. That was one of the first things that I wanted to speak to you about, because for me, obviously, I've been following you on social media and whatnot for a while. I really appreciate what I see on your socials with how much you push and sort of champion the area that you're from. So for people that are listening that maybe don't know a huge amount about the northeast of England, obviously we are currently further north than the northeast.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about the area and also a little bit about the music scene there as well? Yeah,
I mean the temptation is to turn this into some kind of history podcast instead, which because I am pretty, I don't know, dedicated to the story of where I'm from. But like the northeast, it's weird actually, as you point out, because we're in Scotland here, so I'm going to have to talk on English terms rather than British terms, if you like. But from an English perspective, we were very much the industrial heartland of the country, and you've got the West Coast places like Manchester and Liverpool, etc., which are all industrial as well. But ours is very similar to somewhere like Glasgow, where we are now, which was a lot of shipbuilding and a lot of coal mining where we come from. And the reason why I mention all of that is it kind of gave us a bit of a more insular personality than the rest of the country. My dad always had a theory that sort of Manchester and Liverpool are known around the world, and they're quite outgoing because they're either docking, or it was warehousing, or it was things where you had to deal with everybody. Whereas where I come from, where they dug stuff up at the ground, or we made it and it just sailed off down the river, and then we just made another one. And the reason I mention it is because I think that's also why our story to do with electronic music or clubbing history probably isn't as well known outside of the region, because like nobody needed to know about it. People were having a great time in Newcastle since sort of electronic music came to the UK, but it was just wasn't one of those things that we needed to express it or to push it out loudly. We just had a really, really healthy club scene. I mean, here in Glasgow, obviously, you've got Subculture at Sub Club, which is a really long-running house night. But I mean, in Newcastle, we had Shindig, which I think is only couple of years younger than Subculture, or even probably the same age as Subculture. I think it's just a couple of years younger than Back to Basics, which I think is one of the longer running sort of continuous nights that live in the UK. So that was very much a ground, and the techno scene was always massive there. And yeah, like any sort of working class industrial town, people worked hard through the week and wanted to go out and party. In the last however many years, I guess the last 10 years, it's sort of, I wouldn't say it's been aimless, but I think everywhere it's been kind of homogenised to some degree from social media. Parties all started looking the same, the bookings all started looking the same, and it kind of maybe lost a little bit of its localised identity, but at the same time, a lot of big names have started coming out of the region. So like a couple of streets away from me originally, he doesn't live there now, but it was Patrick Topman. In the other direction, we've got Ben Helmsley, who's pretty huge, then that guy Shaq. Now, no disrespect to any of them, and Patrick's an old mate, but they do kind of a different thing musically to what I do, or they represent a kind of a different world to me. And I guess what we're seeing now is sort of like Newcastle artists exploding outwards, but there's always been a healthy scene there. It's just never felt the need to kind of travel out of there. And now what we find ourselves doing is like moved stuff out of the city centre, which I've got to say is we're a massive university town. We've got like 2 big universities and a big influx. So I think a lot of the music scene's been sort of focused on sort of a younger, sort of less age diverse crowds of students. Parties are great, but what we've started doing is we've started putting on parties a bit out of town with a bit of a broader range and sort of a bit more. I mean, that's certainly not just for locals. There's people from everywhere around, but it started with locals and sort of expanded out of that. So yeah, it's an exciting time down there at the moment. It's very interesting. You've got like big names and sort of more underground stuff going on at the same time.
Definitely, it would certainly seem that way. I mean, obviously Richie Ahmed, Patrick Top.
But yeah, Richie's from South Shields, of course. I mean, Richie's more of a contemporary of mine and age-wise and stuff. Richie's huge. Well, Christoph, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's huge. This guy called Jackie who came from. There's a lot of people who, like, for a lot of years, it was unthinkable that a name would come, or big names you would know that came from Newcastle. So, for instance, or from the northeast, the Idgit Boys, who were huge. They're both from Sunderland. Riton, who's won numerous Grammys and was a big sort of techno DJ before he became a pop. He's from Gosforth round the corner. Do you know what I mean? The Pet Shop Boys are from Tynemouth, where I live. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
There's like what it used to be is I think there used to be an attitude that you'd have to move away and you'd have to go somewhere else to do something. And when people made it big, it was that people would think it was despite they came from the northeast, not because they came from the northeast. And the big change in the last 10 years is people are starting to recognise it as an area with a scene or an identity or a personality all of its own.
Definitely. You mentioned Shindig there. I've been to Shindig before, but it was many moons ago.
Yeah.
It was at Digital.
It would have been, yeah.
Is that right? What are some of the other clubs in the area that are kind of popping off at the moment?
There's not very many clubs in Newcastle anymore. So there used to be loads. And I think back in the day, there used to be like a lot you'd end up going to a lot of random clubs because house music was just more underground. So people would just squeeze it in any venue that they could do because it was sort of like not the norm, if you get what I mean, and they just do whatever they can. But like purpose-built clubs, Digital's still going. I've got to be honest, I don't know what goes on there. I haven't been in for years now. I know they do occasionally book big names, but kind of fell off my radar. The Cosmic Ballroom was a big one for a lot of years. They're still doing parties. World Headquarters is probably the most respected or legit club that's going. That just celebrated its 30th birthday last year. It's an independent black-owned space that's been running in Newcastle as almost like a community centre for a lot of years. They had Daphne playing last week. They have everyone. I had Jeff Mills playing My Party there, Robert Hood, people like, do you know what I mean? That's So they're very much on that kind of vein of things. And then there's a lot of sort of DIY kind of punk-esque venues popping up that are doing club nights. There's a place called the Lubber Fiend that is run by people I know that looks... To be honest, I've actually not been to a party there, but I've got a lot of friends who go there regularly, which tell me it's amazing. And they're doing stuff like they're running a community radio station out of there. So there's a lot more DIY stuff sort of sneaking through as well.
I was there a few years ago for a weekend. It was my cousin's stag do. Is it something studios at Cobalt Studios or something like that.
I feel terrible that I haven't even that I omitted mention of Cobalt. So yeah, that's run by some friends of mine as well, and that's fantastic. That's strictly speaking, it's not actually Newcastle. That's Biker, which everybody gets a laugh of because most people remember Newcastle because of Biker Grove.
Biker Grove, I knew
so
you
it's
were
where
gonna say
Biker
that.
Grove, where Biker Grove was set. But yeah, so Cobalt Studios, that's a community-owned. Well, it's not community; it's privately owned, but a community-based space that does everything from live music to sort of social interaction to raves. Yeah, and they've got it really in-house. They have their own sort of litho printer that do all of their artwork and sort of all the printing in there, and that's built up a nice community around it as well.
Nice. Yeah, it seemed really warehousey, the part that I was in, was the feeling that I got. I think I saw Joy Orbis in there.
That would be right, yeah. So he requested to play there for Gabriel, for Apex, who's my business partner in the record label. So Cobalt, Jesus, I'm going to sound really old here. So Cobalt used to be just artist studios with a glass blowing space downstairs. And one of the occupants is a really good friend of mine, a guy called Gav Marshall, and it's his ex-wife and new partner who now operate Cobalt Studios. And they all kind of they had a house built in there and everything. We were the first people to put a party in there before it became Cobalt Studios, just when it was an empty warehouse space. And they're all kind of set designers and they're really quite clever. And the parties was amazing what they'd done. We took over the whole top floor of the warehouse. So you had to come all the way up the stairs. And they got like a false wardrobe. So you had to go through wardrobe doors and you walked through and it was just loads of coats on a hanger, but it just went on forever, like the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And then you came out into the space that they built. And I remember when the sun started coming in, we ended up nailing mattresses up to the big the big sort of patio windows that they had there, just so it could keep on partying through it the next day. So there's still people who come up to me going like, I remember when you used to be in Last Waltz and we came to that party and that was unbelievable. It's like, it was quite memorable.
How long ago was that?
Jesus, I was going to say not that long ago, about 15 years. But yeah, it was probably maybe not that long, maybe about 13 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like that long ago, but obviously that's because I'm getting old, I guess.
No, I know. Listen, I was just talking to a friend the other day and was kind of talking about the time just on the run up to lockdown. And I was like, 2019 was 5 years ago. It gave me a fright to think that time had gone by that quickly, But
I think a lot of people have just I think our concept of time, like as a whole, like as a group of people in general, is being sort of distorted from that. Yeah. I mean, I often think maybe it's just because I've hit my 40s, but then I speak to people who are 10 years younger than us and they're still going through the same thing.
No,
it was one really long year that lasted for 3 years, and then 3 years later, all of a sudden you think, oh well, that was last year. Oh wait, I'm 4 years older than I thought I was. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. Put a pause on so many things, like obviously career progression and whatnot, all these kind of things that just kind of stagnated and slowed down. But you mentioned there Last Waltz. That was a group that you were a part of, right? A group of DJs.
Yeah. Like we used to play the same back room for years, and we were three friends, sort of in separate things, and sort of linked up on that. And we did a bunch of releases around about, I guess, 2009, 2010-ish. And we were starting to get booked for like sort of international festivals in a few gigs around the country. But then I guess I wouldn't say it fell apart, just we all ended up doing different things. I ended up doing a lot of music on my own. Mick, who was part of it, was very much into doing so. He's a singer and he had lots of interest in the live band. Lee had interest in other things, and then I did the Manpower thing because things were slowing down a little bit. We used to run a party called Dada, and it was amazing. And sort of like I think the people we were booking back at the time and the spaces we were doing it was quite unique for Newcastle. So we'd do things like we did one on a rooftop in an industrial estate, and which doesn't sound that mad now, but like back then nobody was doing it, so it's really weird. And we had this party that was in an old music hall that was in the back of a pub that was like 150 years old that just wasn't used. So we used to use the fire door to get in there and bring all the sound in. That party I told you about, where just like weird stuff like that, and it was really good fun for a long time. A lot of them at the Jazz Cafe in Newcastle as well, which I really remembered fondly. But we just didn't make a penny. So it was just something that was just around towards what everything else that we did. So life started getting in the way, and then I think I started concentrating on doing a few things on my own, just as a side hustle. And I mean, so basically the Manpower thing, like when I started doing that, was completely anonymous. And the reason it was anonymous was because I didn't want to basically screw the other two guys over. Because if you're a booker and you're looking, it's like, oh, there's three guys, or I just get one of them. and it's only one hotel and one set of travel and all that. So I was like, well, I need to keep it secret and just pursue this as a fun thing for myself. And typically, because it was secret, all of a sudden everybody got really like interested in trying to figure out who it was. So it ended up taking on a life of its own and kind of took over for us. It was mad at the start. Like people were putting up all these guesses online saying, oh no, I know who it is, it's Andrew Weatherall. And I'd be like, Jesus. and then it'd be like, no, it's Michael Mayer. And then, no, it's John Talabot. And then somebody would be like, no, my wife's Romanian and she knows it's some Romanian guy you've never heard of. And I'd be watching all this stuff going on, and then people were saying like, well, so why is it you're keeping your identity secret still? And I was like, because everybody's going to be so disappointed when they find out it's just some boring bloke from sort of,
I never realised that. I mean, I've been following your stuff for quite a while. I've been a fan of your stuff for a long time and playing your tunes and stuff. But I've probably got onto your music maybe just after that point. Like I never realised there was a bit of mystery around it.
So for the first year of stuff, so I put like music out on YouTube. And I mean, it doesn't seem like that much of a thing, but this was maybe 11 years ago, and like YouTube just wasn't used in that way. This was like pre sort of Winona and all that type of thing. You didn't really have that many YouTube sensations, so it was getting shared on a lot of Facebook groups, just like especially like Alphos and things like that. People going, anybody idea who this guy is? And say, oh wow, that's an interesting way to promote it. And then I signed a couple of records. I did one for John Talabot and Heaven Discs, and another one on Correspondent, but I had a bunch of remixes that people were asking. So they were starting to come out, and then there was just this mad groundswell of interest. But I was starting to realise that, yeah, they were interested in the music, but they're also interested in the guessing game. People are like, oh, it's marketing genius, this. You should really keep it going as long as you can. And then I signed an album with Correspondent, and on the eve of the album coming out, DJ Mag wanted to do a big sort of like interview with us. But so I was just like, well, I'm just not going to hide who I am now, because I was starting to get really anxious about two things. One, I was getting anxious that the gimmick was becoming more important than the music. And I was like, that's like, when that gimmick doesn't exist anymore, that's really going to shoot me in the foot.
Yeah.
I'd like to be remembered for the music I make instead. And the other part was, I was like, the longer this goes on, the more of a like, who is it going to be when it turns out it's me? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I just didn't want to set it all over there. It's like, it's what? Oh, right. Do you know what I mean? So it lasted about 18 months, I guess, this whole thing. And obviously, it was a slow burn that kind of went into a bigger thing. But loads of people come back and they're like, oh, much preferred it when you're a mystery. And I was like, so did I, because like it was mad. Like loads of blogs that wouldn't cross the street to pissing us if I was on fire. Now, like they used to be like literally like, oh, when they thought I was some, because I'd speak in sort of very cryptic or like wear me literary influences on my sleeve and everything, and they'd all be like, oh, I'm just some sort of sensitive genius, blah, blah, blah. And then when they find out that you're a Northeasterner, sort of common working person or whatever else, they're a bit like, you cease to be as sort of mysterious or as exotic to them, and I don't know, familiarity breeds contempt, I guess.
Yeah, you're not some like Romanian. Like,
well, yeah, you're just not othered to them. You just feel achievable and want to move on, which is again, I'm pleased, because I'd rather the merits of my music were what we're speaking rather than some form of identity, especially now where like identity seems to be more important than the music in a lot of ways. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm glad I managed to kind of eschew that.
For sure.
Jesus, if my identity was the important thing, I'd be screwed at the moment. Like,
Yeah. I suppose as well, though, it would have been an obstacle for gigs, because how are you going to keep the...
Oh, well, this was amazing. So the original thought, so the first gig I ever did in the UK was at a place called Freakin' in York. I'd done a bunch in Berlin and stuff first, because I deliberately didn't play in the UK first. So I did like Berlin, Tel Aviv, a few in Spain, etc. And like I'd done quite a bit Lithuania, done quite a bit of Europe, and done that, and just said no to all UK gigs, and then eventually accepted one in York, because we just seemed like really nice guys, and I'm still in touch with them now. And I was like, how am I going to go back? So I was like, do you know what it is? I'm going to go originally. So my friend Ben from who's records his Gatto Fritto, he was like, what you want to do is, if you've got two big mates, which I've got loads of big mates because lads are just big where I'm from, so I pay two of them to dress up like doormen and just stand in front of you so nobody can see you while you're DJing. And I was like, that's a great idea, but it might be quite expensive instead. And then the other one was, I was going to say, well, I'll just wear like a really dodgy, like sort of like cheap tracksuit. And I thought, well, no, if people are saying I'm Eastern European, I'm like playing into a stereotype there, like a Hollywood stereotype of what an Eastern European look like. So like, do you know what? I'm just going to go and play with a scarf around my face. And I went on, and a friend of mine who turned up, was it Claire or Mandy? I can't remember. It was Claire Atkinson. I just started playing, Claire Anderson. I just started playing, and like within the first track, she just went, "What the fuck you got that on for?" And that was like one track. It was my full flirtation, but like doing a dead mouse was just like, all right, fair enough. So embarrassing, the whole thing. But that was the plan. Like I was going to try and keep it sort of some form of like incognito, and it's not me. Like I couldn't do it that way. It's as lucrative as it might have been on the term.
Am I right in thinking, have you been putting out music by someone else on your label who is also going under like a sort of coded alias, but they maybe actually make music?
Vivian. Yeah. Vivian. Actually, I think Vivian may have outed himself, but I'm not sure if he has or not. So I'm not. I cannot remember.
Can't do it on the podcast.
No, I'm fairly certain we did sort of like softcore release it out there. But yeah, Vivian's fairly established in another guise, and just for their own personal reasons wanted to explore this. But we haven't released anything by Vivian. I don't know. They're making a lot of music for films and television at the moment, so I think they've kind of put the project on a brief hiatus, but it's amazing stuff that they make, like really, really good. Like you can tell that they know what they're doing, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure I've got a couple of tracks from your label. So just to backpedal a wee bit, because we obviously mentioned Last Waltz, and we kind of mentioned how you ended up getting onto the Manpower project. There's loads more that I want to ask about that.
Go for it.
Firstly, I wanted to ask you, we spoke a bit about the local scene in your area. What was your introduction to that scene? How did you sort of find yourself involved in the scene, and then how did that then go on to you actually starting to DJ yourself and making music?
So just a slight caveat that I'm a school governor these days, and I'm a parent of a teenage child. So there's a limit to how fully explicit I want to get into certain subjects. But the best way I can say it is that I always enjoyed going out, and I've always loved music. And then at around about, like, I was into electronic music and dance music. I mean, my mother's only 19 years old, and so she was like present for the whole acid house thing. So it was quite normalised back home. So it's never been something that wasn't sort of around there, but it's never been the thing that I was into in my sort of teens or 20s. It's just a thing I was into along with a load of other things. And then, I don't know, around about I raved a bit, then I moved to Australia, and I came back from Australia, and I found myself doing the same dead-end sort of job that I was doing. And then around about 24, I broke up with my girlfriend, I quit my job and got kicked out of my house, all in this sort of space of around about, I don't know, 48 hours or something. And from then up until about the age of 30, I just dropped out of like normal life. I didn't really I just didn't really pursue a proper like sort of traditional job or anything like that. I didn't, I just went out, did whatever I could to make money, and whatever I could do to keep me sort of staying out and just experience being out there. And it was a weird thing that I realised slowly over time that one, I had a good record collection anyway. Two, like most clubs and bars, you could only play there if you owned records. So I was capable of getting work as a DJ, and I just realised that if I was DJing, I'd getting paid to be at the places I was anyway, and my drinks would be free. So I just started, it's that old story, like, oh, I was the guy with the record, so they let me play at the party. But it was like more like every weekend, week out, all of the places I was going, because I was attracted to sort of, the more outsider countercultural type of places, particularly sort of like the queer scene was just a lot more interesting to us, just because people were more fun and weirder and cooler, do you know what I mean? So I ended up getting a regular gigs at a place called Camp David, which was like an amazing bar that everybody went to instead of a club. It was just one of those dancing bars, And this was really around the period of Electro Clash and all of that type of stuff. But I wasn't really playing much of that stuff. I was normally was either playing house and techno records or weird funk and soul or indie stuff, like just like what I owned in my collection. And it was I don't know, it went from that to then I ended up getting a residency at a club and then running the club, and then being moved to, which was called the Red Rooms, which was great. And then all of a sudden I ended up going from there to being the resident, what's now the Cosmic Ballroom. Back then it was the Stage Door at Nice, and just ended up moving from sort of the back room into the front room. But none of it was like, I speak to a lot of people now and they're like, oh, well, what should I do with my DJ career? Or how do I, like, what's the next step in my thing? And should I have a logo? Or like, when do I get my press picks? For me, it was literally like, I'm going out tonight. I might be the one playing records. If not, I'll be the one dancing down the front. And that's all. I just loved going out. I didn't even, it was just a compulsion. I didn't know anything else. It was all I was. And like, I'm not even talking like on the weekends. I was either sleeping or I was at a rave or a house party or an after party. I mean, I was pure scumbag in a lot of ways, to be totally honest. But no, I wasn't. I just like, I was just that guy who was just everywhere. Do you know what I mean? And it just dominated my life. And then I think got in a relationship around about 2008 and things started to slow down. I started to take things a little bit more seriously. But I actually ended up deciding to get a real job. Do you know what I mean? Like, the real job I got was like working in a call center after like working in the same call center 10 years before, which was quite disappointing. Do you know what I mean? So then again, like about 2 years after that, I just went like, bugger this, fell off the wagon again. But I had a bit more clear focus at that point, and that's when I started focusing on the manpower stuff. But really, like, getting into the scene, it was just all about indulging in everything that everybody indulged in, having sort of experiences that, like, I'm a working class guy, which I imagine you are yourself. Do you know what I mean? I know from it, and sort of like you act the same way as the people you grew up with. You start off liking the same thing as that, and you're very much in part of a herd. And then I don't know, at some point in my early 20s, I just discovered lots of other things that I could do or ways that I could act, and it just kind of broke my brain in a very lovely way. And like the things that everybody else did stopped mattering to us, and I started learning the type of things that I wanted to. And I think that's really, because it was such a, like, an epiphany, because it was such a life-changing sort of thing for me to be involved in this. I mean, we call it a culture now. I didn't feel like I was involved in a culture. It just felt like I was going out and raving. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, this is a wonderful cultural experience I'm having here. It's like, no, I'm getting off it at a party. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think because it was such a transformative or life-changing type of thing for me, I think that's why now I probably got such a hard line about the community aspect of it, or I'm like so protective of that, because I do see that being stripped out of it and mined away from it. And people are like, well, why do you care if it's just people having fun? It's like, well, it's not just people having fun. What you're doing is like, you're costing people, if you're killing a thing, you're costing people the opportunity to change their lives the way that it changed mine. Like, do you know what I mean? You're costing people the way to break their social conditioning, or you're costing them the opportunity to actually celebrate being an outsider. If you make everything just all about fitting in, or everything all about being in the in crowd, then it's sort of like, it spoils it for everybody who enjoys being the not in crowd, you know?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that you said there that I kind of want to touch on, and
them all.
A lot of points that I want to discuss. But it certainly seems to me, I mean, maybe I'm looking at this in the wrong way, but there's, for a lot of people that are DJing now, there is like an agenda there is like a career goal in mind. And by the sounds of things, from what you were saying, you would have been there anyway. Like, it wasn't like you were.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, yeah, for the first 10 years, 100%, I was going out for it. I was just as much a victim of this myself, though. So when the manpower stuff took off, it was great. And first of all, you've got all this opportunity to go around. But I did find myself falling onto the hamster wheel and thinking, well, I've released on this label. How do I get on a bigger label? How do I play bigger clubs? How do I bump my fee up? How do I get my name higher on the bill? So I even the only thing is I had to run into that with 10 years behind it. So I knew that when I had a moment of going like, oh, actually this is shite. Like, I've walked in one door, but I'm coming out another one, and these aren't the things that interest me. At least I knew there was something that interested me, that was underlying, that like had value, and that did enrich my life. But I think for a lot of other people now, it's projected as like, I don't know, it's projected like when I was a kid, when everybody wanted to be good at football so they could get signed by a talent scout and then go and sort of, go to the academy for Newcastle United or Manchester United or wherever else, and then eventually become, I don't know, David Beckham or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It feels like that's the view people have of it, rather than just being, just a way of authentically expressing yourself, cutting loose and meeting equally weird people who you can feel different with,
Definitely. The other thing that I wanted to pick up on there was, you mentioned that you kind of just dropped out, and almost like dropped out conforming to normality for a few years or whatever. When I was in my early 20s, I went to Ibiza for like four summers basically. I went for over the course of 4 years. I went seasonally for 4 summers, and I kind of felt like there was just something that I had to get out of my system almost. And it's a common thing that you hear, and I definitely feel like the experiences that I had over there and all the dancing, there was almost a bit of, there was something therapeutic about it, you know, and I think that I came back from all of that, maybe for more reasons than one, a slightly different person, but a better person for it, you know. And I think, yeah, what I wanted to ask you was basically, do you think there's something to be said for that? Do you think those experiences and sort of going out and on the dance floors and sharing these moments with your friends, do you think there is something therapeutic about that? And almost, don't want to sound like cheesy or cliche, but...
Nah, I don't think there's anything cliched about it. I mean, Weatherall always talks about it as a form of sort of Gnostic worship or sort of tribal sort of worship, which is, you know, if we really want to get sort of intellectual about it, you can do it that way. I can only really speak from the point of view of somebody from sort of like quite a deprived working class area and from a that kind of background. But for us, I guess, or like the people I met there, if I look at it now, I think a lot of the people where I come from, and I see it now, it's like when you see these riots in the capital of all these angry bald men in their sort of early 50s, like, you know, being racist or angry or misogynist or whatever else. It's sort of like we were laid with this kind of post-industrial value system, or like industrial age sort of value system, or this need to be part, you know, you got to be useful, you got to go out and get a job, you shouldn't do something creative, it's great to do in your spare time, but like it's no use to it, you know, why haven't you gone out and got a proper job, why don't you act like a man, why don't you do this, and all of these sort of, I guess if I was going to be an influencer, I'd say all of these toxic traits, but I don't know, just all of these outdated notions that were hit hard on us. And like there was just something joyous about going, do you know what, that was all shite. You can do what you want, you can like what you want, you can be into it. If you want to, as the rubber band would say, if you want to fuck a fella, do you know what I mean? If you just whichever way you want to go about it, like, you know, like do what thou wilt, should be the whole of the law type of thing. It's sort of like, you know, you can go out, and it was a joyous experience of going like, I can do whatever I want, and all of that stuff that was forced upon me was nonsense. And you'd see your other people who were just living the drudge of that. And like, not to get too heavy and too serious about it, the amount of people who I was friends with or I went to school with or an acquaintance of, men my age, my generation, who've killed themselves over the last few years, who never discovered that kind of release. I'm not saying it correlates completely, but it is a product, and it's a pandemic in the northeast of England. It's a product of this outdated pressure to conform to being a type of thing that has absolutely no value for this version of the modern world. And like, everybody should be free to go out and be as creative, as happy, and as sort of liberal as they want to, as long as it's not harming anybody else. But we were not brought up to think that. And I think for my generation, from where I'm from, that's what brought us all together, was this freedom thing. And the amount of people, I remember having friends who went to Ibiza before I ever sort of, and I remember the envy of them. They'd come back like a third of the weight that they were when they were doing there, and they'd have a 1,000-yard stare like they'd been to Vietnam. But they were so happy and just so worldly about it. And it's about becoming worldly, like just with experiences, do you know what I mean? And it's just like expanding your mind or breaking your mind to rebuild it even, do you know what I mean? And I think that to me is always the importance of it.
100%, yeah, because I mean, it wasn't just the experiences, you know, being in these super clubs and whatnot. You know, I was out on the street, like PRing with the guy on the left was from Italy, the guy on the right was from Serbia. You open your mind in that sense as well. You're being, you're getting to experience people from different parts of the world and different cultures. And I suppose it also resonates with something that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned community, which was something that I wanted to speak to you about today as well, because from what I can see, you really seem to put a lot of positive messaging out around community also, and on your socials and with the stuff that you're putting out there. And you mentioned there Andrew Weatherall talking about the sort of shamanistic aspect of it, and I've certainly heard like Mr. C talking about that before, like the experience of everybody dancing together and in the one room and all becoming one. And I think the DJ or a promoter, a party starter, plays a really important role in the community, in my opinion. And I also remember seeing you describe the dance music community as a bit of an ecosystem as well at one point. So maybe you could speak to us a little bit about your thoughts on that and what you meant by that.
So it's interesting, like, so you touch on it, like, you know, this whole form of worship and everything, like that is true, and this whole tribal thing of it, that is true too. But like, even as a DJ or the person involved in it, I've never wanted to be the high priest. Do you know what I mean? And I guess there's a version of that where everybody puts himself into that role. Whereas I'm a bigger believer that, like, because I believe in parties rather than events, like the DJ who's playing isn't really on a higher level than the people who are dancing. Like, there's not a DJ in the world who enjoys a party where there's nobody else there but him. So you can't be the most important thing. Like, the dancers have to be just as important. Otherwise, you'd be happy playing to an empty club, wouldn't you? Yeah. So everybody has the role to play on it. And I just think, like, it's almost like, you know, when you see a karaoke party and someone's had the mic passed around, it's happened to have come to you there for it. And I don't know, like, without everybody present in there, without everybody putting their own sort of thing into it, the thing doesn't happen. And you can explode that idea out to just the sustainability of the whole thing. So at the moment, we're existing in a period where massive names command huge fees to play to massive amounts of people, and the money goes pretty much directly into their hands, with everybody else just getting a tiny bit out of it. And that's quite an unsustainable model. It's a rock star model, basically. Do you know what I mean? And that's why we're seeing all of these grassroots club spaces closing and all of these mid-level club spaces closing. And I'm not saying that there isn't a space for dance music that feels like you're going to a Britney Spears concert, or do you know what I mean? Like, there definitely is. But I mean, me and Josh were talking about this before. Just because something sounds exactly the same or looks exactly the same doesn't mean it's exactly the same thing. So the element that I'm interested in is the one that can survive without those huge margins, without people having to take a massive amount of money, with everybody being able to participate, and without having to worry about mass populism. And the only way it can do that is everybody sort of putting in their own share of it. And if it goes all the way, how can I explain it? So you've got, like, if you think of it as a spectrum, you've got, on one side you've got money, commerce, and sort of base business, yeah. And on the other side you've got art, right? Now I'm like, you can fall anywhere on this line of which one's more important to you, but like, it will become more important to you. Do you know what I mean? For me, I'm probably more over to the sort of art end of things, but on this side, where there's business and everything, there's loads of money, yeah, but not very much art, not very much interesting. On this side, when you get pure art, it's amazing. There's no fucking money there. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody's interested in it. So people are interested in what can sell. So what you need to do is try and pull things over there so you can represent the things that you're interested in. Because ultimately, if you go to this side, like, you know, you're going to what's the most popular thing that can appeal to the most amount of people. There's no growth that comes from that. I mean, Bob the Builder had 2 #1 records. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's popular is not a sign of I don't know, intrinsic quality or sort of artistic value, if you get what I mean. So this side looks after itself, because you just get a room full of people who like the same base thing, and they give you a load of money, and then you make a load of money and you do it again. This side, you need to find people and sort of unite them on something, saying, well, you know, the economics of it are quite difficult, like, to keep it going. And that's where everybody sort of needs to put in their side of things. Do you know what I mean? So fees have to be lowered, things have to become affordable. People have to pay, people have to turn up. And so for this to keep thriving, it all involves a level of commitment from every participant. If you go on there and say, like, I am Mr. sort of big deal DJ and all pray to me and my artiness, you're going to have like 10 people turning up not giving a shit about whatever you're doing, and it'll fall apart very quickly. So what you need to do is instead is create spaces that are interesting to people, make it not all about the DJ, make it about the experience, the coming together of everybody, and realise that you're just one component in this sort of arty happening. Yeah, you can be the megastar, do you know what I mean? But if you're not a megastar, like, that's not available to you. That's a very 1% sort of existence that you're looking for. I'm not sure if I've explained that properly, but hopefully that makes sense. No,
it does. It does make sense, definitely. Yeah, I mean, for me, I used to run events as well, and certainly the way that the fees have kind of gone in the last decade or so, or certainly pre-COVID, it just kind of felt like it was almost unsustainable for DJs who are maybe of a level that would be getting booked to play like a 500, 600 capacity club. I mean, I don't know how many club nights I've seen sort of come and go up here in the last like 10 years. I think part of it's maybe to do with the way how festivals have become so big as well, and I think that's definitely got a part to play in it. But I understand what you're saying with I think everybody kind of needs to play their part and maybe understand that if this is going to be a sustainable thing, that things like fees and whatnot may need to come down as well, you know. But
COVID's broke it. Like, so when you first went to a club, I'm going to guess that there was older people there who you knew, who showed you the ropes, and so you ended up becoming part of a tradition that they went on. And then, as you know, you graduated up and went through it, and they were like, well, this is what's important. And this is like, you know, oh, I really like the dance music. Well, have you heard of Detroit techno? Do you know what I mean? And like older brother characters in a club that sort of passed on a value system down to you, and that sort of meant that people knew that why Laurent Garnier was an important person, etc. Do you know what I mean? Or what people meant and what their value was. Even, you know, we keep on mentioning Weatherall, you know, like why you should pay attention to somebody like Andrew Weatherall. But then you have this 3-year sort of break where people who would have been at the age who were supposed to be going clubbing and meeting people and becoming sort of part of the ecosystem I mentioned, instead, the only access they had to go into clubbing was watching Boiler Room or DJ streams done with drones, or do you know what I mean, or all of this type of thing. So the only messages they were getting about what was important was who was the biggest, who was the most sort of, you know, had the biggest pyrotechnics, or was the noisiest thing online, etc. So there's a whole section of that generation, and not all of them, because some of them are just like gone way more underground. It's really cool with what a lot of like the younger scene are doing, and like, so there's one half of it who just got no interest in big names at all, and it's almost this kind of like DIY scene, which I find really exciting, more so because it has nothing to do with me and I'm not invited to it, which always makes it really appealing. But there's a real big section of those people who are just, they've not had the opportunity to connect with things by being a participant at a club and just going, I'm going to go to this club every weekend and find out about who the DJ is. They've went, I've learned about this DJ is a big deal, this DJ is a big deal, and this DJ is a big deal. So the times they go out, it's like, oh, that big deal I've heard of is coming to town. Let's go with all of my friends to that. And they've missed the point, like they've missed the stage where they'd be able to connect with it because it was a club instead. And there's nothing that would drag them into that club, because it's like, well, no, these are the names I've learned about, and I've learned are good because of video, and they're not playing at this 200 or 300 capacity venue, so why would I go there? And I think something needs to break the cycle of actually attracting people from that generation to find out about what it is, what club culture is, not going and listening to a very well-known electronic DJs in a giant space, but what actual club culture is, because there's a lot more to club culture than just sort of doing that hand in the air dance in front of somebody with, you know, big graphics and all that type of thing. Like, club culture is a different thing. Club culture involves a DJ and involves dancing, but they're just a small part of it. You know, from everything from just that sort of being lost experience to meeting new people to it being almost quite an unusual and scary place and all of that. Instead, you're getting this kind of Disneyland version of it, and nothing to kind of pull them into this underground version instead. And almost in like a 15-second window. That's been the big killer. That's been something like, I went to an event at a big London venue that I'm kind of got some involvement with, not as a DJ, so I was there for kind of work purposes, and it was insane that they'd set up the booth in the middle of the room to resemble like a Boiler Room show, and the way that this young crowd is sort of, like very young crowd, it was Fred again playing. It was just after he got quite big as well. So they're all surrounding him, and everybody of that age group. Do you know what a cargo cult is? So a cargo cult is sort of like during the Second World War, the indigenous tribes people in some of the sort of Pacific islands would watch the American soldiers drilling every day, and then they'd see them getting airdrops of food. So when they left, they thought it was a religious rite. So there's religions in these sort of islands that follow sort of American military movements, because they've copied it and thought that that's like a thing. And these kids are like a cargo cult because they've seen people on Boiler Room. They're like, that's how you're supposed to play supposed to perform in a nightclub. So they're like waiting for just that big drop moment, and then nothing else. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was watching sort of like it was an imitative thing of something that they've watched on TV in small bites, and them trying to sort of recreate it in that space. And I think a lot of that kind of thing's happening now. Also, it's not bad or good. Like, it's just not the way that I connect with things. So I'm not saying that it's terrible, but I can kind of see the routes in which it's gone there, and I can see why some of the pitfalls might be for their own enjoyment in the future. That's all.
Do you think it's going to come full circle though? I feel like things come in waves, right? And I think that the younger generation will understand that a lot of this stuff that's going on at the moment is. I mean,
is it though? Because like at the end of the day, like, I'm 44 now. Like, it's wrong for me to tell a young person what's the good way to go on and what's a bad way to go on. I mean, if I were to do that, I'd just be basically, if you took that a generation before, it'd just be like, I don't know, like Who fans saying that like electronic music's just a load of nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Like something new comes along and like that's been kicking around for ages.
Yeah.
I can't say what's the right or wrong way to behave. I can just say that what's sustainable, what's not sustainable, and also point out like where you're probably affecting your own connection with the thing you're into.
Yeah.
So whatever it sounds like, whatever the music is, like that bit I can't and won't comment on.
Yeah.
But what I will comment on is like the way that you're interacting with it and whether or not you're allowing yourself to fully have that transformative or sort of life-changing experience that it possibly could be. As far as music goes, coming full circle though, like I've spoken to a few people who are quite, you know, heavily involved in booking some of the more famous or, you know, places that are like legitimately known as being sort of strongholds of good music. And they've all said that like, that, you know, that they felt like there's been this big post-COVID reaction and that it's starting to come back to normal now. And so hopefully from a pure self-interested point of view, the things that I'm interested in might come back in. But if they don't, so what, who cares what I'm interested in? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's it. I mean, listen, I'm at risk. I'm at risk of sound. I'm 34. I'm at risk of sounding like an old fart and a bit old fart.
In club terms, you kind of are.
Yeah, exactly. I know. By saying, you know, is it going to come full circle? But like as you said, it's like, you know, Who fans saying that electronic music's a load of nonsense, and you know, the same was said for hip hop, right? It's when
exactly.
you know, they said hip hop would be a fad. And,
but drum machines and sampling were seen to be like the absolute death of music at one point. I remember even in the 80s, people like me mum's ex-husband was a drummer, and I'm just saying like drum machines, it's disgusting and it's technology. That's the same with like playing records, everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody mistrusts what comes in from the next generation.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's an element of correctness in it as well.
So during lockdown, you launched your bedwetter project, right?
Yeah.
How did this come about, and what differentiates this project from Manpower?
So it wasn't actually, I released it just before lockdown, like an album, but I think the album had been kicking about for about 2 years, and it came about purely from what I was talking about, which was that the stuff I was doing as Manpower very quickly went from me just expressing myself properly to me trying to like match what I'd done beforehand, or be like, you know, like, oh, well, that was this kind of success, let's go to a bigger label, what can I do with music to take it further? And I really got in my head, and it turned into a kind of form of writer's block, because I was trying to do that and make popular dance music that people want to sign and would continue to get played on Radio 1 or big DJs would be playing. But at the same time, I had a need to show I was a smart ass or a clever person, or like, you know, I had all of these big influences. So what I ended up doing was trying to make big popular music and then try and jam all of these influences to show out everything that I knew about sort of, you know, like Karl-Heinz Stockhausen or whatever. Just and there was just this total disconnect, and it just meant I was making really shitty music, basically music that was like needy and sort of like wasn't fulfilling what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, all of these kind of pseudo-intellectual leanings I've got and all of this kind of like arty-farty stuff, I was like, well, why don't I just do that as a practice and get it out of my system, but with no thought to ever release it or anything, just literally just, so it was basically just an exercise of saying, well, how into my feelings can I get, and how sort of like experimental and sort of, you know, I don't know, esoteric I can get in sort of the music that I make. And it was all like, I'll do it instinctively, it'll all be one take, it'll be minimum machines, there'll be as much sort of archival or found sounds as I can. And I don't know, over time, it just, without any thought about it, with it going on in the background, it just formed into this first album, and it formed into sort of a very autobiographical thing. So I was like, I've made it, so I might as well get it out there and see if anybody connects with it. And it just took us off in a whole new direction. And I realised that I got as much joy, or maybe more joy, out of that when I was doing it. And also, it made like the differentiation of sort of, you know, doing that with the purpose of expressing myself in that way, and doing that way with the purpose of expressing myself saying, let's dance. Do you know what I mean? Like it made both sides better. So the record came out just around the lockdown. And then I had no job because I couldn't tour anymore, and I was a touring DJ because we all got locked down. I just came back from Mexico, and my family was still in Mexico, and I was locked up in northeast England while they were still over there. And the local opera house advertised for an artist in residence. So I was like, oh, screw it, I'll give that a go instead. So the bedwetter thing instantly got an extra lease of life straight after I got rid of this first bunch of music, because I was like, well, you can be the artist in residence at the opera house. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? So I pitched them on a bit of a loose plan, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that. So I was like, oh well, how much more can I take the piss? So I was like, well, can I do this? And they're like, yeah. Like, all right. Well, can I write a symphony then? They were like, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh crap. Well, I've said I'm going to now. So I ended up writing like an orchestral symphony, which was
amazing.
Yeah. It was a really, really rewarding experience. And then at the same time, then the following year, I had an absolute nightmare beyond COVID for personal reasons that I'm not even go into. And like, it was like, then the bedwetter thing, instead of being a method of avoiding writer's block, it ended up being a way while I was completely in isolation and lockdown. It became a way in which I was like, well, can I try and use this as something to give me something to do every day to translate my emotional state about that? And then I ended up writing an album that came together again completely naturally, that just sort of, I don't know, expressed the anguish of being on my own and sort of like the falsehood. I don't know, it was like, it really became like music's supposed to be, I guess, just a form of very pure and very personalised self-expression that really, really did have therapeutic benefits to us, which is great, because a lot of the times when you make something, you're like, well, the value of this is that loads of people are going to buy it or hear it or they're going to love it. Well, you can't lose if you're just making something. The value of this is the fact I've made it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Which is what you kind of try to seek with anything you do. Is like the bit I enjoy isn't how anybody else likes it. It's the fact that I've got it off my chest, or I've managed to sort of push that out in the world. Yeah. But I haven't written anything as bedwetter for 2 years now, actually. So I don't know if that means I'm just in a happier place or what. But
yeah, I mean, I suppose with dance music, right? When you're DJing, regardless of how left field or interesting in the music is that you're playing, there's like an underlying objective there. You want to make people dance,
exactly,
right? And when you're producing dance music, it's much the same. So I suppose when you're producing or writing this kind of music or performing, you've really not got that element to worry about, right?
Well, I mean, that's where the name bedwetter came from, because I always used to say that this kind of self-indulgent sort of it's crybaby music. It was music for bedwetters, and people just whinging. So I used to call it that. So I was like, well, if I'm going to make some of myself, I might as well call myself bedwetter,
Yeah.
But it is like, it really is just really, really. I mean, it's not that pure self-expression, because obviously you're putting an album and trying to sell it. So like, there's definitely some commercial element to it, but it wasn't made with that in mind,
Yeah.
The objective was literally just getting shit off my chest, which. It's a really nice, pure approach to go for music, as long as you're all right if people don't like it, which is obviously
nice.
With other stuff, it's a risk. With this, it's almost the reward in it,
Nice. I'm slightly conscious of time here, because I know you've got to get off. So a couple of more questions that just try and get through before you need to shoot off to the gig. In the last few years, you've been organising a party series at a local working man's social club in North Shields. It looks like you've brought in some of the best guest DJs from within the scene to play alongside you. So what gave you the idea to choose this unique location for the events, and what makes the party so special?
So I had 2 bucket list items, and if anybody's listening from Radio 1, there's still the Essential Mix. You still haven't invited us to do that. So like, if you do get round to that, like, that would be good. But no, the other one was always said I wanted to put a party on in a social club, and then there's an event at the end of the street called the Mouth of the Time Festival, and they had some COVID money, and they said, well, we'll give you a little bit of money to do something if you want to do it in North Tyneside instead of Newcastle. So I was like, all right, well, social club, you can pay for my ambition. So I invited Johnny and Keith, who live around here, from Apter, to come down and do it. Yep. They paid for it, and it was just phenomenal. Like, absolutely, like, me and Gabriel put it on, I guess, as a money-making exercise, to be totally honest. And then when it came out of it, it's like, we've done a lot of parties because we wanted to do them, but this is the first time I think I've done a party because I feel like we should have done it. We came off and it's like, people are so grateful. And so, like, I grew up in social clubs, like being from Wallsend, like the first sort of underage drinking I did was in social clubs. Every 16th birthday was in there. Then it was everybody's 18th, and it was their christenings or their marriages. Do you know what I mean? Or even wakes. Do you know what I mean? And and what we realised as soon as we put the party on is everybody who turned up from the same background walked in, and they had the same thing. So they act in a different way when they come in. As soon as they walk in, it's like it's a party.
Yeah.
It's not a turn your nose, like, you know, chin strokey sort of nose in the air club. It's just like, let's get amongst it. And the beer prices were from the 90s as well. Do you know what I mean? So it was just amazing. So we're like, well, we'll have to do another one. So over the time, we've ended up having Prosuma, Artwork, Daniel Avery made their back last week. We had a special request. Scream was supposed to play. He asked us if he could play. Unfortunately, he had to postpone it, so we're waiting for a new day on that. Who else have we had? Jesus. Hardware Brothers, Rex the Dog, and we've got a list of people. But what's ended up happening is, I guess, our reputation for how pure the party is now got to the stage where I'm not even approaching people to play for us. They're getting in touch with us because they've heard it's just a legit and good party, and it's really nice because it means that I know that everybody who's coming are in it for the right reasons. You know, it's just, I don't know, it's managed to shortcut all of the things I hated about putting parties on, and the best bit is, it's 12 minutes walk from my front door as well, which I've never had in my life. Do you know what I mean? So the weird thing is, like, as I say, my dad died 18 months ago, and before he died, one of the last conversations, I was telling him about the party, and he told me, and I didn't know this, that his granddad used to have the shop on that site before it got built. So it feels very kind of poignant and very of where I'm from. I was born in a hospital that isn't there anymore, that's literally 10 minutes walk from it. And like, I don't know, in middle age and as a parent and as somebody who's at a different stage in their career, there's something very satisfying about having gone all the way around the world several times, I've played out 5 out of 7 continents, and there's not that many gigs going on in Antarctica. Do you know what I mean? And like, you know, I've played every single club that I could ever want to play, every festival, all of them more than once, and other than the Essential Mix, I've done pretty much everything that I've ever wanted to do. So the thought of being able to do something that's of the same quality as everything I've seen around in the small town, the admittedly sort of, you know, socially sort of deprived town that it is, although it's turning a corner very rapidly. Honestly, for the stage I'm at, it just couldn't be the better sort of finale for this kind of act, and like just being able to bring everybody there. It genuinely is. I mean, you're Edinburgh, you have to come down for the party. It's like I can't like oversell it. It's just amazing. Yeah. Have a look at the photos of Daniel Avery from the last one, having the time of his life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like people just like it just has a different effect on people. It's really, really amazing.
Nah, I do. I will come down. I've actually been planning on coming down for a while. There's been a few that I kind of like. And just things have happened, like I've ended up DJing somewhere else on the same night or something, but I do need to come down. I will make the effort to come down.
That's become quite the destination. We've had the furthest I think we've had anybody travel from has been, I think, Madrid, maybe Amsterdam. Wow. Sure. But people like, it's on people's like,
it's on the radar. It's just
become a destination. It's really cool.
No, amazing. Okay, so one more thing I'm going to ask you before we finish up. So going forward, what's on the horizon? What have you got coming up? And also, is there anything in a career sense that you would actually really like to pursue or achieve in terms of music that you want to put out?
Right.
What have you got coming up, and what would what's the plans going forward, basically?
So post-COVID, I took a bit of time out of releasing that much music, and then I don't know, I hit a real purple patch. So next release is on the 29th this month, and that'll be my 7th release in 7 months. That one's on Lala, who lives here in Glasgow. Her label, Brand New, and that's the response for that's been insane. I don't know. I must have the release I did before this was with Make a Dance. Again, that's like the releases are doing better than they've ever done before. I seem to be. Don't know if I've tapped in. I've either become trendy all of a sudden, or I've tapped into something. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. And then next month, I've got a release on Records with Louisa on vocals, and that's a label I've loved for a lot of years. So I'm really
Radio Slaves label.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be my 8th release in 8 months, and then I have an edits release the month after that on my own label. So that'll be 9 months of releases in a row.
Yeah.
So now, like, because I'm getting to 9 months, I'm like, well, I need to do 3 more because I want to do a year where I've done a release every month for a year. Do you know what I mean? But all of it's just, I don't know, there's got a lot of interest in it. I've been invited back. I mean, by the time this goes out or anybody's watching it, like, I'm back on the Panorama Bar team sheet again. I've been invited to go and play at the Laboratory, which is the gay sex club that I have around the back, where they do like so they do 2 parties a year there on the bank holiday. So I'm playing there with Andy Baumecker and Lady Monarchs and Eli Escobar, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just getting to play. I've been invited to go and play Harvey's Club in Bali. I'm invited back to Robert Johnson. Just all of the clubs that I love playing are like, I'm back at them. And like, rather than kind of chasing some version of like, oh, well, I need to go to this bigger place, or I want to be on this festival and all that, just happy playing cool clubs again. That's all I really want to do. I don't really want to chase the festival thing. So like, I guess the only career goal I've got is like, I don't know, if they finally give us an essential mix, I can just put myself out the ice floe and disappear, because I think that'll be literally everything ticked off. Like I've got, like when the pandemic hit, I had to deal with the thought that I'd never get to DJ again. I really felt like that might happen, you know? And about 6 months beforehand, I'd played the closing at Panorama Bar, and I'd played for like 10 hours. So when the pandemic hit, I was like, there isn't really a gig I want to do more than that anyway. So I've literally just ticked off all of my bucket list stuff, apart from the one I keep on going on about. So really, like it's just nice to be going to cool places to see cool people again. I mean, this weekend playing at Berkley Suite. I love coming to Glasgow. Tomorrow I'm at Ulster Sports Club, which is like another social club, like a small, cool venue. And I've found myself back on a circuit of things that I really enjoy. So just So if you see what's up in the future, just continuing to release music I'm really into without a massive amount of fanfare, and keep on playing really cool underground clubs without a massive amount of sort of big noise about it. I think that'll keep me happy for the rest of my life, to be honest.
Sounds good. So we're obviously going to come to the club with you.
Amazing.
What can we expect tonight? What are we shooting for?
We've never played back to back before. I mean, it's this. I love acid, and Josh is an acid DJ, so I think it'll be him playing acid and me playing my version of it and saying how well he can.
Nice.
Whether it pisses him off or not. Basically, just lots of loose stuff with the 303, and I guess. But
nice.
No, I really do enjoy playing back to back, and like, he's got a really loyal crowd. The party's been running for a very long time, so it's him and Luke Vibert's party from Luke Vibert from Reflex, like Aphex Twins, sort of contemporary. So it's got a really good pedigree. And I think, it's just got I'm looking forward to who turns up. Nice, diverse crowd. It'll be a lot of fun.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thanks very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Really, really good to have you on. I wish we could have done a wee bit longer, but listen.
Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry, I had to go for a ramen. So.
No, you're fine. At some point in the future, if we're going to be in the same place or something, maybe you could come on again if you were up for it.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk for Britain, so that's no problem at all.
Definitely. Thanks very much.
No worries, man.
Thank you. Cheers.